Have you ever noticed that people still talk about artificial intelligence in war as if it belongs to the future, even though the battlefield has already moved on? And the real question is no longer whether AI will enter combat, but how many countries are already racing to weaponize it faster than their rivals. And let me ask you two very direct questions before we go any further. If the war in Ukraine has already proven that cheap drones can wreck expensive armies and force militaries to rewrite doctrine in real time, why are so many people still pretending the old model of warfare is intact? And if the US Army is already pushing to equip every squad with low-cost expendable drones by the end of 2026, while launching industrial efforts to produce at least 10,000 small drones a month, do you really think the AI war is coming? Or do you think it has already begun and most civilians are just late to the realization? Stay with me until the end of this video for 3 reasons. First, I'm going to show you why Ukraine is not just a war zone, but a testing ground that has already shattered old assumptions about military power. Second, I'm going to break down what the United States learned from that battlefield and why it is now trying to industrialize drone warfare at scale. And third, I'm going to explain why this is not just a story about more drones, but about the rise of algorithmic warfare where speed, autonomy, and data are starting to matter as much as tanks, planes, and artillery. And if conversations like this help you understand the real shape of modern conflict instead of the outdated version people still carry in their heads, click like, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with other people who still think AI war is a distant scenario instead of a current reality. The future of war is not arriving politely. It is already here, and it is arriving through low-cost, high-volume, unmanned systems that are changing what military force looks like on the ground. The US Department of Defense itself has described drones as the biggest battlefield innovation in a generation and said they account for most of the casualties in Ukraine. While the US Army has launched efforts to massively expand production and deployment of small expendable drones. That is not science fiction, and it is not think tank fantasy. That is the military telling you in plain language that the old assumptions are breaking. And the place that forced this realization was Ukraine. For years, people thought drone warfare meant large, expensive systems like the Predator and the Reaper, flown far from the battlefield and used for surveillance or precision strikes against much weaker enemies. Ukraine destroyed that mental model. In late 2023, President Zelensky set a target for Ukraine to produce 1 million drones in 2024. And those systems are cheap, easily weaponized, and used in huge quantities by both sides. Once that scale enters the battlefield, war stops looking like a contest between a few exquisite platforms and starts looking like a contest between production lines, signal resilience, and adaptation speed. That is why the Ukrainian battlefield matters so much. Small drones started as eyes for artillery and reconnaissance, then evolved into direct strike systems, then into layered defensive and offensive networks. Ukraine is now rolling out AI-assisted systems that help cheap explosive drones identify or reach targets even in heavily jammed environments. In other words, the battlefield has already moved from remotely piloted systems toward increasing autonomy because the electronic warfare environment is too harsh for old assumptions to survive untouched. And this is where the economics become brutal. Once a cheap drone can destroy or disable an asset worth orders of magnitude more, the old cost logic of war starts collapsing. That is why analysts, militaries, and suppliers all keep coming back to the same uncomfortable truth. Cheap mass can overwhelm expensive precision if the cheap mass is good enough, networked enough, and produced fast enough. Ukraine and Russia are both now working on industrial-scale drone output because the battlefield has already taught them that losing the production race means losing initiative. Russia learned this lesson too. The Iranian-designed Shahed 136, used by Russia under the Geran 2 name, has become one of the defining long-range one-way attack drones of the war. West Point's CTC and multiple news reports note that Russia has built these systems by the thousands and used them in recurring barrages against Ukrainian cities and infrastructure. More recent reporting and analysis also show Russia expanding drone launch infrastructure and mass-producing Geran drones at scale. That means this is no longer about a few imported systems. It is about Russia turning drone warfare into an industrial process. The US Army did not watch Ukraine and decide to simply buy a few more drones. It began trying to change doctrine, procurement, and production. The Army aims to buy at least 1 million drones in the next 2 to 3 years, a dramatic ramp-up from current levels. At the same time, the Sky Foundry pilot program shows the service aims to domestically mass-produce upwards of 10,000 small drones per month beginning in 2026. That is not a minor adaptation. That is an admission that drone warfare must be industrialized. The policy push goes deeper than production. A memo titled "Unleashing US Military Drone Dominance" said drones were the biggest battlefield innovation in a generation and pushed for low-cost, expendable drones to be integrated aggressively into US military units. Reporting on that directive noted that by the end of 2026, every squad is supposed to be equipped with low-cost, expendable drones, and drone capabilities are meant to become normal across training and operations. That means the US is no longer treating small drones as specialist add-ons. It is treating them as basic battlefield tools, closer to ammunition than to prestige hardware. This is also why programs like Launched Effects matter. These are not just hobby drones with camouflage paint. The Army's Launched Effects concept centers on autonomous systems that can be fired from aircraft or ground platforms to provide scouting, electronic warfare, communications relay, target identification, or direct attack, and can be designed to operate individually or in swarms. Reporting on Army solicitations and demonstrations shows the service wants these systems fielded widely in 2026. In plain English, that means the US is trying to build a combat layer where humans no longer have to expose high-value platforms first. Machines go first, gather data first, absorb risk first, and in some cases, strike first. And America is not doing this in a vacuum. Russia has scaled up its own drone production. Ukraine is now using battlefield data to train allied AI models and has opened access to millions of annotated images from thousands of combat flights. Reports have confirmed Ukraine's defense minister said this data was being opened so allies and companies could train AI-driven drone technologies faster. That means the war is not only producing drones, it is producing the data that will make future drones more autonomous, more adaptive, and more effective. The battlefield itself is becoming the training set. Once that happens, the race changes character. It is no longer only a contest over who has more drones. It becomes a contest over whose models learn faster, whose software adapts faster, whose swarms coordinate better, and whose autonomy survives jamming, spoofing, and battlefield chaos. Ukrainian systems are already using AI to help drones lock onto or fly to targets even after signal jamming breaks the normal human control loop. That is the part people should take seriously. The battlefield is moving from remote control toward machine-guided continuation under degraded communications. If this is helping you see how serious this shift really is, click like, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with other people who still think the future of war is a debate instead of a production schedule. The algorithm is starting to matter like a commander. That does not mean humans have disappeared. It means the speed of observe, orient, decide, and act is increasingly being compressed by software. AI systems can process sensor feeds, classify targets, route autonomous movement, prioritize threats, and adapt under interference faster than human chains of command can do unaided. Swarm systems make that even more important because once many cheap autonomous or semi-autonomous systems cooperate, the practical effect is not one drone versus one soldier. The practical effect is a data-driven network pushing decisions and pressure onto the enemy continuously. And this is where the ethical debate usually falls embarrassingly behind reality. While diplomats argue over guardrails and abstract definitions, the battlefield is already moving through the ugly middle ground, where autonomy, machine vision, electronic warfare, and mass expendable systems are blending faster than law and doctrine can stabilize them. That is the honest picture. The AI war has already started because the incentives are too obvious, the lessons from Ukraine are too clear, and the cost asymmetry is too powerful for serious militaries to ignore. The AI war has already started because the essential ingredients are already in place. Ukraine proved that cheap drones can reshape the battlefield. Russia industrialized one-way attack drones and massed them. Ukraine responded with its own scale and increasing AI integration. The United States then moved toward drone dominance, million drone acquisition plans, every squad fielding goals, and production initiatives like Sky Foundry. Once the data, doctrine, production, and autonomy all start reinforcing each other, you are no longer talking about a future possibility. You are talking about a present military transformation. And the ruthless truth is this: countries that still think of war mainly in terms of prestige platforms and old procurement timelines are not preparing for the next conflict. They are preparing to lose it. Because the battlefield is now rewarding speed, adaptation, software, mass production, and machine-assisted decision cycles in ways that old military cultures are still too slow to absorb. If this gave you a sharper and more truthful way to understand what is really happening in modern conflict, click like, subscribe to this channel, and share it with other people who want reality instead of nostalgia. And if you want deeper conversations about technology, warfare, and how these larger shifts are shaping the next decade, join the Destiny Architect Telegram chat, where we continue these discussions with people who want clarity instead of comforting myths.